Hey everybody, this is got a little voice crack there, Dan. Did you hear that? A little, a
Puberty
little.
hits everyone differently, you know.
I'm apparently excited to get the podcast started today. Hey, it's good to be with you today, everybody. My name is Robb Ryerse. I am alongside Dan Deitrich, and this is the Common Good Politics podcast. Our fearless leader, Doug Paget, is vacationing.
Good for him.
Yeah, if anybody deserves a vacation, it's Doug Paget. That's when you work so hard to try to, I don't know, save democracy and the world. You need to take a week off.
Don't undersell it. We're trying to save the whole world as well as
absolutely.
Democracy.
Absolutely. Well, it's good to be with you. I am coming to you from, as Doug would say, just outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Dan, are you actually in South Bend, Indiana, or are you outside?
I have a South Bend, Indiana address, so I'm right here.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, we're happy to be along with everybody today. Tell us in the comments where you are listening from. We're glad that you're here. Dan, we've got a fun show. We got some good stories to talk about. I have a cat.
Yeah,
who is
joining us today is what's the cat's name again?
This cat is named Sage, and
Sage.
I don't know if you'll be able to see it here, but the cat has the word icy written on its side. Can you get a look at that?
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, which is it's weird.
Wow.
So Sage just kind of jumped up here. So Dan, we're gonna talk with a congressional candidate who's running in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to hold a House seat that's been pretty contested over the years. We're going to talk about some news of the day, but we really there's two things we probably ought to start with. First of all, Dan, are you excited that this is Tuesday? I mean, there's a lot of people that are excited that it's Tuesday
because of all the twos.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it took me a second, but now I got it. Yeah, because it's February 22nd, 2022. There's so many twos.
So many twos. Yeah. Is that the type of thing? Do you get excited about that kind of thing?
I noticed it earlier today, and I did get a little excited. I was like trying to figure out the next time in human existence something like this will happen,
Oof. Yeah. Exciting. I don't really care.
Is it good luck? Do we get a prize?
Yeah. So I mean, like the Pi Day, the people like the May the 4th be with you and all that. Like I don't know.
Not into that scene, huh?
Nah. But what I am into is this new pair of pants that I've got. We were talking about this a little bit before we got started. I got a new pair of pants, and they look like dress pants, but they feel like sweatpants. And I might never take them off. And Dan, when I mentioned this to you, this led to a revelation from you that initially blew my mind. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But what, Dan, give us this revelation.
Well, yeah, about 2 years into this pandemic, working from home primarily, I finally bought a pair of sweatpants. Just your classic gray sloppy sweatpants. Yeah.
Oh,
and I don't think I've owned sweatpants since I was like 10.
That's amazing. That is it's that, like my first reaction was that's absolutely amazing. That's like someone saying, "Oh, I don't own any t-shirts. I don't own any jeans. I've never worn a pair of sneakers." I mean, like that's like it's like, wait a minute, sweatpants. But then I stopped to think about it, and I'm like, I don't own a pair of sweatpants. I've got pajama pants. I've got some, I don't know, like really thin pants that I wear when I do yoga now, which that ought to be a discussion someday.
Thin and tight? How tight are these pants?
Not at all. No. And then I've got these new things that are like sweatpants. But Dan, you just got your first pair of adult sweatpants.
It's a whole new world, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Do you wear them out in public?
I am still hesitant to, but when the need arose, I definitely did. And I felt strange about it. But I fit right in at Walmart, so it was fine.
Yeah, my mom had a rule growing up that we were not allowed to wear sweatpants in public. So, we just I kind of have that ingrained in my head of
Dress for
I'm
success, you know?
yeah, I try not to be judgmental of other people wearing sweatpants in public. But as for me in my house, we will not wear sweatpants in public. Uh, Let me ask you this, Dan. Your sweatpants, you said they're gray.
Yeah.
What's the legging situation like down at the bottom?
They've got the
Or
band around the ankles.
is it uh one of like the like thick bands, or is it like the thin little elastic
It's
thing
like
like
a
in the
2-inch
classic?
cuff, I would say.
Oh yeah. See that I'm not even sure that even qualifies as classic sweatpants. Um, Unless they have like that
Like there's a
elastic
rubber
tight.
band in there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's probably, I mean, you came up with cuff, which was probably the word I was missing. But I just so many listeners and viewers flocking to the show for sweatpants talk. So listen, let's talk about some other things. Okay,
There's a lot going on. I
the
mean,
world is at war,
yeah.
apparently. So, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week, and kind of asked the question: Are you paying attention? Are you watching? It feels like we're on the brink of World War III, and we're now there. And so Russia has begun to invade a couple of um, um, regions in the Ukraine, which they
Hmm.
believe are loyal to Russia. Their argument is that when the Soviet Union was dissolved in the early 90s, that the lines were drawn in a arbitrary way, and there are natural, geographic, cultural, um, language connections that um,
Yeah, make them feel
that
more at home with
yes,
Russia.
that there's some solidarity, there's some connection between
Hmm.
these people, and they shouldn't be cut off by some arbitrary border. Uh, Folks do know and while I don't think Russia should be invading Ukraine, I do have this sense that borders are totally arbitrary, and
Yeah.
I hope people realize that. There's nothing sacred about a border. They move a lot during human history,
Hmm.
and even if you put a wall along it, it's still an arbitrary line in the sand. Um, Sometimes quite literally. So Russia is said that these regions in the Ukraine should actually be part of Russia and not part of the Ukraine. And the loyalty of the political leadership in these regions, Russia says, belongs to them, and so they're going in a what they call a peacekeeping
Yeah, sending
mission.
peacekeepers into the region.
Yeah.
Sounds
Does that,
legit.
well, it does it make you wonder about every time we've said we're sending peacekeepers someplace?
I did see a tweet. It was like, look, Putin is bad news. What he's doing is bad news. But is the U.S. the kettle or the pot in this
Hmm.
situation? Like, do we really
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
claim the moral high ground?
Yeah. When it comes to like international interference, it really feels to me like the Biden administration is, I mean, they've really got their backs against the wall with this one. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to respond in an effective way. I don't think Putin's going to be able to be stopped in this. I think any sanctions that are enacted against Russia and or these regions in the Ukraine are, frankly, they're going to be more hurtful to the average everyday person living in those areas,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to any kind of political leader. And you can look around the world, and so often sanctions, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, and it's just kind of a total crapshoot. So
Yeah.
it's this Republican narrative that Biden is weak compared to Putin is so laughable after the Donald Trump administration and
And the
his posture
bromance
towards
between
it.
Trump and Putin.
Oh, yeah, I mean, just the political disingenuousness is just astounding at
Right.
times. But it's not to it doesn't come as a surprise at all.
Yeah.
Um,
It seems like there's so Germany has this pipeline that was just finished pumping gas, oil
mhm.
from Russia to Germany, and they have, for the time being, said we're shutting this down. We're not going to let it open, even though it's finished. It's a $10 billion project. This seems to be the biggest weapon of sanctions in the arsenal. How long do you think they can hold out on this, though? Like it hurts them as much as Russia.
Yeah. And frankly, it's going to hurt all of us. The anytime gas and oil supply gets limited,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about inflation. And for those of you that don't listen on Fridays, if you haven't heard Dr. Fadl Kaboub talk about inflation and modern monetary theory on the times that he's been a guest on the show, it's just absolutely fantastic. So often inflation is triggered by rises in gas prices, obviously. And this seems to me to be the kind of thing that could absolutely trigger that. And while we thought inflation was going to be on the decline headed into the fall, the fear is that something like this could actually trigger not just a decrease in inflation, but it continuing to increase. So there's lots of concerns here that those that have are affected by the political implications of things. They're paying attention to this and trying to figure out how it's gonna happen.
Yeah. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, Putin doesn't care. He's like,
No.
his lifestyle isn't going to change. Like, the only thing that could matter is if he makes life hard enough for the average Russian citizen that they do something about this and have a public outcry, which isn't really their thing in Russia, to speak
Well,
out
I mean,
against.
I mean, you think of the early '90s, and I have that mental picture of Boris Yeltsin standing on a tank, addressing a huge crowd of people, and the fall of the Soviet Union. But man, it feels like we're a long ways from there. What we're not a long ways from is ridiculous behavior by that former guy.
That former guy, the twice
just
impeached.
a couple of just twice impeached, failed president. All the accolades we could throw on him. Yet again. And hey, Kay, who just said hi from Northeast Ohio. Hey, Kay, I grew up in Willowick. I'm a Northeast Ohio guy too. That former guy so very often has made just huge technology blunders. Think about like ticket sales for events. Think about that, like his comeback event in Tulsa, where like the TikTok kids, the K-pop fans all
reserved all the tickets,
and they thought there was going to be 1 million people, and they had an overflow section set up outside, and it was a huge bust, and frankly, and not funny at all, literally cost Herman Cain his life because he got COVID there. I mean, just So this team has had some really big technological blunders, and so because Donald Trump was kicked off of Twitter and Facebook, he decided to create his own social media platform and called Truth, and which I mean, like, are we living in a George Orwell novel?
It's literally
It's
just like, let's call the lies truth, and then
yeah,
it'll be the truth.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it
and
didn't turn out. The launch didn't go all that well, did it, Rob?
no, no. They say that it's because of the just so many people who were attempting to log in and create
Incredible
accounts.
volume
Um,
of users.
and frankly, like, that might be the case. That might be the case. There are, a shocking number of loyal Trump supporters throughout our country. And it Truth Social, pretty much crashed on opening day. And this is such a bad thing to happen. This is like every technology person's worst nightmare, isn't it, Dan? I mean, you're kind of a tech guy. Like, isn't like this, like, the thing on launch day not actually working? Oh,
Right. Usually you try to work out the bugs before you launch something like this. Yeah, so a lot of
yeah.
people just couldn't even log in. They couldn't create accounts. They were getting error messages like the one we have on the screen. Um, but based on just some graphic design choices, we can guess that they didn't put a lot of effort into this. You can see on the screen here.
Uh,
It turns out that the logo for Truth Social is almost identical to the logo of a truck company. And so,
yeah, a truck company in the UK.
yeah.
It's
So
not even an American
it's
truck
like a
maker.
blocky T for those of you just listening, with like part of the T is just a square, and the Trump Truth logo is identical. It's the same color, blue background, white T. They just added another little square on the Trump one to make it
Yeah.
different.
So it looks a little shorter, a little fatter to me, but you know, but it is clearly a ripoff. Now, Dan, this is not a complicated logo. Yeah, uh, what is it about these people that they just can't do anything honestly? That they have to steal everything? This is
Can't even come up with an original logo.
it's just ridiculous. Just
I j-
ridiculous.
and so if
Have
they're
you
stealing
signed up
logos,
for?
you know that all the back end like tech stuff is equally stolen, ripped
Yes,
off, cobbled
yes,
together.
yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Is that, I personally haven't signed up for a Truth Social account yet. Have you?
No, not
Um,
yet.
but I wonder if we could broadcast live on Truth Social. Um,
Let's
but
go.
I read that the interface and the setup, everything is just exactly like Twitter. Like, it's exactly
He really
like
went
Twitter.
out and made his own Twitter because he got kicked
Yeah,
off.
yeah. This makes me miss the days of when he when he remember when he launched his own like
His
his
blog.
first kind of social, it was this big social media like innovative social media communication tool, and it turned out it was a blog.
It was a blog. It was
It was a
literally.
blog.
It's a place where he can write things no one else can.
uh,
That's a
uh,
blog. That's what you got there.
The
Yeah.
other funny Trump story to me that has come up recently is this realization that Donald Trump's PAC, the Save America PAC, the Political Action Committee, it's a super PAC. No, that's a leadership PAC. Sorry. And if you don't know the difference between a leadership PAC and a super PAC, um, Good for you. Go live your life. You don't need to know the difference. Here's the basic difference. A leadership PAC is political action committee that is set up by a politician, by an elected official, that they can use that money to support other candidates. They can't use it to support themselves. So it's called a leadership PAC because it basically gives them the opportunity to be a leader. And and basically it's a horrible mechanism of influence peddling in our corrupt political system and how we finance campaigns. So Save America PAC is a leadership PAC set up by the former president. It has raised $108 million, which is a lot of money for a PAC. And they haven't spent any of it on candidates. I have been living with this profound fear that Republicans are going to take back the House of Representatives, take back the Senate, and the type of Republicans that it will be that take them back will be, Trump Republicans. And I have lived in fear for several months and for a while now that, the Trump machine would gear up to support these just tremendously problematic candidates all over the country, and that they would, that this unstoppable machine would be at their backs and they would have resources to run successful campaigns. I'm feeling a little bit less concerned about that today, with the revelation that money's there to do that. But this guy,
he
thinks the money's
stingy.
for him.
Yeah. He can't share. He is incapable of sharing.
Yeah. Which is what a leadership PAC is its only function. Now, here's the thing. A leadership PAC, you cannot spend the money on your own campaign. If it was a super PAC, then you could spend, the super PAC could donate, the donation limit is $5,000. A PAC can donate $5,000 to a candidate. He has $108 million. He thinks that this is some kind of slush fund. This is some kind of war chest that he's going to be able to convert into a presidential campaign for 2024. It's not. That money cannot be converted to a PAC that can support his campaign. It cannot be turned into campaign money for his own presidential campaign in 2024. This money has to be spent on behalf of other candidates running for office, or it just sits there. Now, this is all
being said,
this is all assuming that we're dealing with people who play by the rules.
Right.
I'm not sure we're dealing with someone here who plays by the rules. But this is, I don't know, Dan, what do you think? Does this give you a little bit of like, oh, well, maybe these horrible Trump candidates all over the country are not going to have the resources we feared they were going to have?
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to make his pet candidates like do some sort of public like oath of fealty to him, or like what they'll have to do to get money from this PAC. I don't know.
Yeah, but right now is primary time. Right now is the time that these Trump candidates are in primaries. They're running against other Republicans. I mean, the California primaries, March 18th. Like, this stuff is like happening now.
But Trump hates to pick a loser. And so if he just doesn't pick anybody, waits to see.
Yeah. And he is consistently, like, he does not have a great track record of picking winners. And that's a great transition, because he has attempted to pick winners in Western Pennsylvania and has failed. He's run Trump supporting candidates a couple of times against a congressman named Connor Lamb. Connor was able to fend off those challenges and hold his seat. Connor's now running for the vacant United States Senate seat in Pennsylvania. And, try not to pick sides with things, but Connor's a good dude. Dan, one of my favorite Dan Deitrich moments is when we were in Western Pennsylvania at an event with Connor Lamb, and that he spoke, and we were there, and there were protesters that were there, yelling at us. And Dan, I have this picture on my phone of you singing your song "Hymn for the 81%" and turning and singing it at the protesters. And it's one of my favorite photos of you, Dan. So Donald Trump has attempted to take this seat. He hasn't been able to. Connor Lamb is vacating the seat as he runs for the U.S. Senate. And so our guest today is someone who's running for that seat. Dan, why don't we start? Can we show Chris's campaign video, and then we'll talk with Chris?
Yeah, let's show the video and
all right,
bring Chris
then
on.
We'll come back with Chris.
Maybe if I'd been born in a different place, I'd be a different man. But lucky for me, I was born here in Western PA. Dad's from Jeanette, mom's from Sheridan. I got to play ball in the backyard in the park with my brothers and our friends growing up in Thornburg. Then one morning, the world stopped.
We just got a report in that there's been some sort of explosion at the World Trade Center.
There was the crash of a fourth plane outside Pittsburgh.
For my buddies and me, it was our Pearl Harbor. I went off to the Naval Academy, deployed 3 times, served in Iraq, where the American military built schools, new pipes and infrastructure, bridges, all things we could sure use around Pittsburgh.
We wanted nothing more than for him to come home safely. But would there be jobs for his generation here?
I did come home. Started law school at night while I was still on active duty. Got the chance to work with Pitt Cyber.
Working to secure and protect Pennsylvania's democracy is of the utmost importance to me.
The work at Pitt Cyber continues against high-tech challenges to our kids and families, our jobs and savings. One thing Pittsburgh knows better than anyone is that the best defense is a good offense. Right now, too many people are being prevented from speaking out, from joining a union, prevented from voting, prevented from holding the people in power accountable to do what's right and actually get stuff done. So we started going on offense.
The University of Pittsburgh's faculty votes to join the United Steelworkers Union.
My colleagues and I fought to form a union. Over 3,300 new members of the Steelworkers. It'll mean better pay, better working conditions for our jobs. We can do more. Now's the time to build new roads, new bridges, new schools. Help every Western Pennsylvania family get ahead by expanding Medicare and Social Security, lowering the cost of drugs like insulin and EpiPens, and get corporations and billionaires to pay for it. It's time to do the things we should have done a long time ago. Because right this second, senators with their money tied up in private equity and venture capital are blocking help for Americans whose money's tied up in credit card debt and student loans. They don't care what paid family leave means to a family on a working class income. They're not worried about grocery lists and packing lunches, but I am. I'm Chris Deluzio. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I'm running for Congress. For Western Pennsylvania, for all of us.
Hey, Chris, it's good to have you on with us today. So good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on and making the time.
Yeah. So there's so much to talk about. I love your campaign video. Love that launch video. It does such a great job introducing you and telling folks about the issues that matter to you. And we want to kind of dive into several of them and talk about several of them. But I gotta say, can we start with the major thing that bothered me about it? Is that okay?
Sure.
I'm from Cleveland. So that Steelers flag right at the beginning, not good. Not good.
Listen, that's not a source of negotiation. There is no line there.
All right.
Very clear, okay.
All right.
You can be friends out on that.
Yeah, this is one of those things that we'll have to put our differences aside for the common good here. As a Browns fan and a Steelers fan, spent some time chatting. I don't know, Dan, do you have any strong feelings about teams in the AFC North?
I'm a Bears fan, so
it's nothing to even worry about. Yeah. So, Chris, your background is so fascinating because it really brings about an intersection of things that of issues and this moment that we are in right now as a nation. Your military experience, your knowledge of kind of what's happening on the international stage as we, are we on the brink of World War III as Putin's driving tanks into the Ukraine? The importance of voting rights and cybersecurity in the midst of all of these allegations of election tampering and all, people wondering like, is any of this secure? And an onslaught against voting rights on behalf of people. I mean, you feel to me like just so uniquely qualified to serve in Congress at this moment in time.
Well, number one, thanks. I wouldn't throw my hat into the ring to try to hold this seat, to ask people for their votes and their support and their money and their time if I didn't think I could go do the job. And I think I can. As you say, we have a number of pretty unique, terrifying challenges in front of us. And it runs the gamut from a war in Europe to our democracy under attack to the social and economic bonds in this country fraying. Right, we see workers pushing back more and more because our situation, Western Pennsylvania, all over the country, has gotten so tough for folks. And I think all of these challenges, I think they're related. I think they're related to an ideology that's put people last. Right, that's whether you're looking to stay in power at the expense of our democracy or looking to pump up profits at the expense of your workers. I think it's an ideology that's greedy in a lot of ways and selfish. And that's the exact opposite of what my campaign's about. And you've heard me talk about the common good. I love that that's something we've got in common because I do think it gets to the heart of what's going on in this country and where we've got to turn the page.
Yeah. That's really great. Can you talk a bit about your background, particularly with cybersecurity and what that means for election security and preserving democracy?
Yeah. So in my, post-military life, started law school at night, leaving the Navy, and ultimately got into doing voting rights and work around protecting our elections. And that, of course, has a big component of thinking about cybersecurity challenges, there in the context of threats to voting machines or systems that election officials rely on. But you're talking and dealing with, actors, whether they're nation states, threats to our infrastructure, which we've seen attacks on things like pipelines, you name it. So those challenges are pretty serious and don't just limit themselves to voting and elections. But that's been my focus principally. And, it's a focus that I think we really need right now. You look at what's going on in state houses all over the country, Georgia, Texas, you name it, Harrisburg here in Pennsylvania. But for a different governor, we'd have the same kind of restrictive laws passed in Pennsylvania, making it harder for people to vote. And that's where the right is. And so I think the answer there, it's got to be, yes, fighting in the counties and the states, but we need action in the Congress. It used to be we could pass a voting rights law with 90 plus votes in the Senate. Well, that's not where we are anymore. And it's too bad, but it doesn't mean we don't have to get it done because we do.
Yeah. So tell us about the process of deciding to run for Congress. Like this is the first time you've run for office?
Yeah, I'm not a politician. I guess I'm a candidate, whatever that makes.
Yeah. So tell us about it's a bizarre thing to one day wake up and start a normal day and then go to bed that night thinking I might run for Congress. Like what is that? What's that like? Like how did you come about having the sense of this is something I need to do?
Well, I start with, I hope my biography makes it clear. I come from a place of service as central to my life. I took the oath as a 17-year-old the first time in Annapolis, spent that time in the military. I've worked in the judiciary. I've worked in public interest. It's who I am. That there are lots of ways to serve that don't require you to run for office. And I looked around. I saw, Congressman Lamb stepping into the Senate race, a seat that I think we've got to hold here in Western Pennsylvania to be able to deliver for folks still. to keep our majority, that we can still pass legislation and do things like the infrastructure bill and get ourselves on a footing where folks have more economic security and so much else. And so to do that, got to hold this seat. And I decided I would do this and try my best to do exactly that, to ask my my community, my neighbors to let me serve, let me represent them. I've been working hard ever since. And so it's not something I took as a small decision. It's a bizarre thing every day. I'll be honest with you, what a candidate life is like. But I'm working hard at it and really have been humbled by the support from folks all over here.
Yeah. Is there something that's been like a big surprise to you, that like you thought it was going to be this way? You thought it was going to, it was good, campaigning, running for Congress was going to be like this, and it turned out like, oh, it's completely different. Is there any kind of big revelation, some big aha? Take folks inside, like, what it's like to really run for office. Do you have anything that's like, oh,
Yeah.
you would not believe this?
Well, there's a part that if you've never done this before, you're really starting up a small business in some ways, and that's what a campaign is. You've got to bring in money, you got to deal with expenses. So it's running a business in some ways on top of everything else, and that's weird and probably should be obvious, but it's a weird part of the job. And then and this is a critique of our system a bit, and I knew this going in, how much fundraising matters is really an indictment of how we fund our campaigns, how they're run.
Yeah.
And the amount of time and effort that goes into doing that, it's not a healthy way to elect folks. And I say this a lot, and I really, truly mean it. Whether you're good at that doesn't indicate whether you're going to be good as a legislator. It's not a good test for folks whether they'll be good at the job. And that's ultimately what you're doing, right? You're trying out, for your fellow citizens to represent them in Congress and be a legislator. That's the job.
Yeah. Chris, talk to me about unions. I see a poster in the background about unions. Pittsburgh is a big, historically, a lot of union activity there. It seems like over the past 30, 40 years, folks have been chipping away at the power of unions. What do you see the role of Congress in strengthening unions, and why should people care about unions still?
Well, I think we know from a lot of evidence, people's lives can tell you in their day-to-day, unions are our best shot at giving workers an equal say on the job, at pushing back at corporate power, which has grown tremendously in this country in decades. And Western Pennsylvania is a special place for the labor movement. We have a lot of history here. Blood's been shed, to secure basic rights and dignity for workers here in Western Pennsylvania. It matters to folks. And I think what you're seeing is as more and more workers are stepping up to form unions, to take a harder line in negotiating with employers, and to push the case in Washington. That gets back to your question, well, what can the Congress do? We've seen the courts really whittle away at protections for workers when they're trying to form a union, when employers are union busting. And I remind people, it's not the policy of this country to be neutral. You go back and read the National Labor Relations Act. It's the policy of the United States to encourage collective bargaining for folks to join a union. And I think laws like the PRO Act, which would reset, so we've got an equal playing field for workers who want to join a union, who want to organize. That stuff we need. And there need to be real consequences when employers break the law or fire folks who are trying to organize or trying to step up. And that's what the Congress ought to do. And I was glad to see the House get that through. It hasn't made it through the Senate. And so if I'm there in the next Congress, believe me, I'll be fighting for it too.
Yeah, that's great. Chris, what's the status of redistricting and the map in Pennsylvania? I mean, for folks that might not know, every 10 years when the census is done, there is reapportionment where different states get determine how many Congress people they're going to have. And then that triggers the drawing of the lines of where those congressional districts are going to be. Pennsylvania has had over the last few years some drama with their congressional districts and the way the lines are drawn. All over the country, because there was delays with the census, and like the whole process has been delayed. it's just, it's just been such a headache for everybody. Where's Pennsylvania at this point? Do you know what district you're going to represent yet?
Yeah. Well, our numbers are not. The short answer is we're not done in Pennsylvania, which here we are in the end of February, and we're still not done. The political process in Pennsylvania to draw our congressional maps is a bill through the General Assembly, through the House and the Senate, that goes to the governor. Well, that process broke down. There was no fair map sent to the governor, so he rightly vetoed the map that was sent to him. And our state Supreme Court has now taken this on. They had a hearing on Friday, and we're all anxiously awaiting a map here any moment, any day. And thankfully for us in Pennsylvania, although this process has played out so long, we do have the benefit of our state Supreme Court, which, has read our state constitution correctly to guarantee fair maps. And that's what we're expecting. And we expect to see here very soon, perhaps while we're on. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be great. So is the Supreme Court, are they the ones that are drawing the map now, or is that what they're doing?
Well,
did they take that responsibility for themselves, or?
Yeah, they've taken this litigation on, and there are a bunch of proposed maps from all kinds of parties before the state Supreme Court. It seems like they'll choose from one of several that could be, fair maps. And years back, they had written a new map when they tossed out a Republican gerrymander, I think in 2018. So they had some experience with dealing with this problem here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Do you expect that your district's going to change much?
It might. The reality is, you look at the geography of Western Pennsylvania, there are only so many ways you can cut this and have a fair map. So maybe some municipalities change. We've got to pick up some turf, the least, frankly, of any district in the West. We're the most populous in Western Pennsylvania. So every district's going to change a little bit, but we don't have a ton of turf to pick up. So hopefully things aren't moving around too much.
So it's one of the most purple districts in the country, in a lot of ways. That, we're getting to the point now where there are fewer and fewer and fewer competitive races for Congress, and it seems like both parties kind of like it that way. Your race, your district historically has been one of those competitive races, and so I'm curious about how you're handling that, like how you're managing to reach out to Republican voters and get their support. How are you managing kind of running as a Democrat in a purple district?
It's certainly a competitive district here. I mean, Joe Biden won it in 2020 by about 3 points. Connor Lamb has managed to hold this district and won by similar margin in 2020 and some tough elections before that too. It's a competitive place, but it's a place we can win as Democrats. And I think I draw this distinction sometimes between where Republican politicians are and where voters are who might be Republican or independents. And those aren't the same place, right? There are lots of components and pieces of things I talk about, things that Democrats talk about that are really popular, not just with Democrats. Things like protecting Social Security, veterans benefits, Medicare, building infrastructure and investing in infrastructure. We had a massive bridge collapse here in Western PA only a couple of weeks back. And that's not unique to that bridge or our infrastructure in general. People know we need investment. People don't love being ripped off on healthcare or seeing corporate consolidation in that industry or any other. And so I think, again, wherever Republican politicians might be, there are lots of things that we're doing, that I'm doing in this campaign, like protecting our democracy. People want to see elections and a government that's healthy and intact and secure. And I think a lot of this stuff, again, cuts through and cuts across party lines, even if Republican elected officials want nothing to do with it. Their voters do. I'm going to do everything I can to reach out to voters, Democrats, independents, Republicans, meet voters where they are, go there, ask for support. That's the first part of it. You got to ask, and we're doing exactly that.
Yeah. Do you think there's areas where Democrats aren't talking about issues that need to be talked about? What are some places where you're wanting to change the conversation and talk about things that really matter to voters but aren't getting the attention of the national politics?
Yeah, the national commentary, I think sometimes is just out of touch with what was happening in places like Western Pennsylvania. I mentioned infrastructure, and yes,
Mhm.
we've had some discussion about it, I guess, in the national press, but around here, it's a big deal, right? It's not just roads and bridges, locks and dams, our buses, our rail, you name it. People know that this stuff needs investment. They don't want lead in their water, right? They don't want roads collapsing. All of this stuff really resonates with folks. And again, it doesn't matter what your party is. And you can tie it to specific pieces of things you pass every day, maybe going to take your kids to school or heading to work, you name it. I'd like to see more of that. I try to talk more about it. Healthcare has at times been talked about, at times it hasn't. I think it's crazy to me that we don't let Medicare negotiate drug prices down. I'm a veteran. I use the VA. You can look at the VA and compare it to to Medicare and see the VA pays considerably less because it can negotiate drug prices. It's obscene to me that we ever make any American make a decision between medicine they need or you know getting sick, maybe dying because they're worried about bankruptcy
Yeah.
or putting their kids in bankruptcy. And I think, again, whether you're a Democrat or independent Republican, that frustrates you. You know that that's a problem. And I don't think Republicans have anything to offer to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the status of your race, Chris? Do you have a primary that you're in, or is this something that you're feeling like you're on your way to being the Democratic nominee pretty easily?
I'll answer yes to both. How's that?
It's great. We love it.
We haven't had to start petitioning here yet because of our Supreme Court put our petitioning on hold as they're dealing with our map. So we don't yet have the ballot set, but that's coming here soon. And I feel like we're in a strong position. We've earned support here from in-district members of our state house delegation, our county council members here in Allegheny County, folks in Beaver County, to include the only Democrat elected as a member of the county commission there, the only labor endorsement in the race. So we're feeling really good about where we are, and the fundraising's been positive too.
Good. How can people, get connected with you? We've got folks all over the country who care particularly about Democrats holding the House. This is a critical seat to hold as Representative Lamb, hopefully moves to the Senate. This is a seat that is absolutely critical for Democrats to hold if they're going to have control of the House and keep Republicans from doing that. So how can they support you, Chris? Where do they go? What do they do? This is, shameless plug time for folks that are watching or listening.
Well, number one, we would welcome any and all help. It means the world. And we really do have a big task ahead of us to hold this seat and keep this majority. So folks can, check us out, Facebook and Twitter. We're at Chris4PA. Website is chris4pa.com. And if you want to shoot an email, believe me, it's really us. We'll answer it. It's info@chris4pa.com. Any of those are good ways to get in touch with us.
Yeah. I have emailed info@chris4pa.com and gotten a response. So
it really works.
Great. Yeah. It's not the email address I use anymore, but it's there. So I maybe one final question and just maybe to bring the whole episode full circle here. It's a little bit off the beaten track, probably. I'm willing to guess you have not been asked this question on the campaign trail. We had this revelation this morning as we were talking that Dan just bought recently the first pair of sweatpants he's owned as an adult. And while I was making fun of him for this, because it seems so ridiculous to me, it dawned on me that I don't own a pair of sweatpants currently. I've got pajama pants and, other kinds of pants. I just don't. Chris, do you own a pair of sweatpants?
I do. Big fan of sweatpants.
It's a whole new world for me. I love it.
I feel like I'm missing out. Chris, thank you so much. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. We wish you all the best. We're big fans of you and your campaign, and we look forward to we're going to be coming to Pittsburgh and doing everything we can to help you win, and hopefully folks will we'll head over to your website and find you online and be a support too. Thanks so much, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Dan, it feels to me like every week we talk with these different congressional candidates, and I just think like, the personalities, the expertise, the backgrounds, like these are adults that we want in the room. I just,
kind, competent people. It's so refreshing, and you just hope that they can compete with the huge money machine. Well, that's apparently a little more stingy than we thought, so maybe there's not as much money for opposing candidates. But
I mean, we've got, next week we've got a candidate from Kansas who witnessed the insurrection from his apartment window in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
And moved home to run for Congress because he was so spooked by what took place on January 6th.
Wow.
The week after that, we have an ordained pastor who is running to be the congressperson from Washington, D.C.
Oh.
And did you know that Washington, D.C. has its own congressperson?
But they don't have much.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all this. There's a lot to talk about. And exactly. And her name is Reverend Wendy Hamilton. Patrick Schmidt is who we're going to talk to next week. Like, there's just fascinating people doing really good work all over the country. And it's really kind of an honor to put a spotlight on them, in our way here on the show. So
for sure.
That being said, Dan, is there a conversation happening tomorrow?
Yeah, we've got a couple conversations we pre-recorded. So we've got tomorrow and Thursday, some really good stuff coming at you. So stick around for those, and then back to our normal schedule next week.
When our fearless leader returns. Oh, Kay mentioned look up Morgan Harper from Ohio. Kay, Morgan's a friend of mine. I don't have to look Morgan up. I could text Morgan. So we'll absolutely.
And thanks to everybody else in the chat. Very active chat today. To
Kay,
Jim, Mike
was asking a question. Do you think it would be possible to draw congressional district lines without funny borders? Yeah, that's the whole problem with the way it's set up, Mike, is that a congressperson, each of the congresspeople, they represent roughly an equal number of people. So as populations change, that's the challenge. That's why we get the weird lines that happen so often, is that what they're trying to do is balance out population. And so as different neighborhoods grow and others shrink, that's what makes it difficult. Now, that process has been politicized. So it's not just balancing out populations, but it's knowing how those populations are going to vote and, dividing some that you'd want to dilute their influence and combining others to strengthen their influence. And so we get these crazy lines as a result of that. So I think we're always going to have weird looking lines, but I think it could be done in a way that is not politicized and really needs to be. So Catherine, Kay, Barbara, who else? Nelda jumping in the chat. John, always good to see John.
Today's show is brought to you by the letter P from Caitlin. She just writes P, the letter P, capital P. Not sure what the context was or what. Yeah. Maybe she left off some letters. I don't know.
Yeah. And Jim is Jim's wearing shorts in California. So it's Dan and I are wearing sweatpants trying to stay warm. Jim's wearing shorts. So great having this conversation with you today, Dan. Really enjoyed talking with Chris Deluzio, and encourage everybody to check him out online and support his campaign. He's one of these people we need in Congress. And the Common Good podcast will be back tomorrow.
Take care.